As you walk in the door, can someone close the door at the back of the room? Thank you. Okay, so let's get started. Welcome everyone to the WebTransport meeting at IETF 123. For those of you who have just walked in, please remember to sign in to the Meet Echo tool so that you can join the queue. You've probably seen these buttons before, but please use the hand tool to join the queue and the mic button if you're remote to unmute yourself when it's your turn. Here's the note well. Please make sure to read it and please pay special attention to the IPR, what's the word? IPR and the code of conduct and the disclosure. Yeah. And we operate under a code of conduct at the IETF. So if you encounter or observe any violations, please talk to the chairs, the ADs, or the ombuds team. And we already have a note taker. Thank you, Marco. And here's the agenda. So would anyone like to bash the agenda? I see no hands, so let's move on. Will, do you want to take it away?
This works. Buenos dias. My name is Will from Akamai. I co-chair the W3C side along with Yanivar Brewery from Mozilla. So we just have a 7-slide update on progress since last IETF. So well-timed humor, thank you. Our last working draft was updated 2nd of July. Our charter runs through the end of the year. We can extend it if necessary. We've set a timetable. We're really trying to get to the end of our spec and go to the next step, which is candidate recommendation by September. That's quite aggressive. We're 93% complete in terms of our issues. We have 5 open issues. They're all ready for PR. So as soon as those PRs are pulled in, we will go to wide review and start walking through the release process on the W3C side. So I want to summarize some of the major changes since July 25 when we last presented an update. So there's been a bunch of references, thanks to Nidhi doing much of the work actually, to update. We were referencing the HTTP3 spec and not the overview doc. So now we cleanly reference the overview doc on the IETF side. The next item was probably one of the biggest technical changes. We removed the singleton writable for datagrams. So prior to this change, there was one place you could write datagrams. So if you wanted to use datagrams to say send audio and video, you could do it, but they would be mixed in the same writable and have the same priority. So you could not assign flows of datagrams different priorities. And this, we decided, certainly from the mock side of the house, was not ideal. So we removed the single writable, and now you can create as many datagram writables as you want. And each of them you can assign a different send group and a different send order. And that allows you to assign relative priorities not only to other flows of datagrams, but to streams. We try to summarize this in this somewhat busy diagram. There are 6 flows happening here from a client. There are 2 main groups. So we have a concept of a send group. If you don't assign a send group, you're by default in the null send group, which is the one shown on the left. And then if you assign another send group, it's the one on the right. And there's We didn't assign weights between groups, so it's fair shared between the groups. Within the groups, there's a number called send order that defines the priority with which the data is written to the wire. And you can, here you see we're creating a bunch of datagram writables, and we're mixing it up with some streams and assigning different priorities. So we think this gives as much flexibility as is needed without being overly complex, and it certainly meets the use cases that were presented. We've added a new property on stats called @send_capacity. It helps you interpret the value being returned by the estimated send rate. If @send_capacity is false, it means it might be application limited. You haven't sent enough data to get a good estimate of the send rate. If it's true, it means you're sending data at network capacity and you can probably trust your estimated send rate a little bit more. Neither is ideal, neither is perfect, but we felt that this property would help applications correctly interpret the value being returned by the estimated send rate property. We also added a method to return TLS keying material exporter for the TLS session. And the API is shown there. We've updated a bunch of public samples. They're co-located on a CDN in both Chicago and Amsterdam. There's a public echo server. It's very simple. You can send datagrams and streams and they'll be echoed back to you. There's a more sophisticated web codecs echo where you send audio and video and it comes back to you. There's a few issues with Safari. It's not, I don't believe it's Safari's fault at this point. It's to do with how the samples were written 2 years ago and not updated, but we are updating them. There's a reliable reset API. You can basically write some bytes as the example shows, then you call commit on your writer, write some more bytes, and then if you abort, you get under the covers, you get a reliable reset at your commit point. And we added some guidance and language on how to pick max datagram size. And I just want to cover, at the prior meeting, we had a lot of discussion and many meetings, in fact, about considering removing server certificate hashes, which was a feature we had in. It was marked at risk. We had some very fruitful discussions and an ad hoc meeting. So thank you to the participants, some of whom are in the room, for a very balanced discussion. I won't repeat the text that's on the slides, but I think there was an outcome from that. The end conclusion is we're retaining the feature, server certificate hashes, for those who wanted it. There isn't a better answer today, even though there were some objections, but that is the state on server certificate hashes. And then lastly, you may have seen the announcement. Safari have now support for WebTransport behind a feature flag. We're very happy with this. It brings us to 3 major code bases for WebTransport, which is more than we need actually to progress the spec. And chat with the Apple guys if it's not working for you. I believe they have an update. Just came out 10 minutes ago, so more there. But the Echo server is certainly working, and that's very nice to see. This is also the first meeting where we have no items we need discussion or feedback on. So I consider that great. And we look forward to completing the spec this year. Any questions? None. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Ben.
Hi, Ben Schwartz, Meta. I do have a question. Can this API actually be implemented over the abstract API defined in the overview? My understanding is that the layering here ostensibly is that the W3C WebTransport API lives on top of an abstract WebTransport layer defined by overview, which lives on top of one of at currently 2 different protocol implementations in H2 and H3. And maybe that's not correct, but if that is correct, I particularly wonder whether the new commit method can actually be implemented over that abstract API.
I think Eric's queued to answer this. So good.
Yeah, Eric near Apple. Yes, I think some nice folks in the W3C working group have done a bunch of work to make sure that they've scrubbed a lot of the spec of the transport specific references. And so it pretty much tries to exclusively refer to the overview doc. And I believe we just added the commit for the reliable reset stuff into the overview. For H2, you've essentially committed everything you ever send. So that's a fairly no-op.
So-
But there is now a concept for that in the overview doc as of the latest update. And I believe that is hopefully what's either referred to or about to be referred to by the W3C spec.
So I'm looking at the overview doc, and it has an event called all data committed in the Git head copy, but it doesn't have a method to force a commit now.
I can comment on this. So those two are completely unrelated. All data committed means something different, and in the case of HTTP2, as soon as you write fin to your TCP buffer, that event is fulfilled.
Okay. It looks to me like there might be a slight mismatch here. I think it can be addressed, but to address it, we might actually need another method in the overview called commit.
Yep. An issue would be lovely.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Will.
Okay.
Alan, you're up next.
Hey everyone. So about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I sent a mail to the list saying like, hey, like let's get everybody really excited about interoping and hacking on the latest stuff we've been working on, like flow control and the next protocol negotiation bits and maybe reliable reset. And yeah, nobody replied to my email. So the hackathon results are a little disappointing, but probably better than anything that we've had in the last several hackathons. Probably it's been a year or more since anybody did. So we did get, this is, for people who don't know, I wrote a test draft called the Devious Baton Protocol in 2023 that exercises all the features of WebTransport, server and client, bidirectional and unidirectional streams, and datagrams. Just by passing data back and forth. And so we got it working, but not with the current draft. So no one's using flow control. No one's doing any of the protocol negotiation things, but at least the basics, we were able to get it working in Chrome and Firefox and Safari. There was a bug in Firefox we found that at first made it look like we thought that maybe server initiated unidirectional streams did not work. It turned out that it was just the case where the unidirectional stream arrives before the 200 OK, it doesn't work. But I guess the question is like, there's been a lack of energy around implementing these things. And I think we'll see as we go through the draft updates that we're very close to thinking that we're done writing this protocol down. So I don't know, maybe how about a show of hands of people in the room who have a WebTransport implementation? I see 4 hands, but many of them are all from Apple.
Anyway, can I ask the room another question?
What?
Who in the room is interested in Mock? You do realize that Mock has a dependency on WebTransport, right?
Right. So, I mean, I think what we're hoping is that from the Mock side of the house, we have dependency on WebTransport. We need WebTransport to be done. We need the implementations to be like up to the latest draft. Particularly, there's something we're heavy blocked on. This is everyone implementing the next protocol negotiation because we want to use that for our version negotiation in Mock. So, but we can't really do it until at least one or maybe all of the browsers have that feature in. So, I guess I'm trying to find like, where's the energy to like get people to commit to finishing implementing this in all 3 browsers or more soon. So I don't know. I invite people who might be implementers of those browsers to come to the mic and talk about your plans.
I will certainly come to the mic. I was actually getting a slightly different takeaway from some of the things, and some of this is because we spread our hackathon throughout the week as well as on Saturday and Sunday. But this is the first time that I've seen 2 of 3 major browsers actually having real evidence that I can click a button and have packets go and do cool things with them. So from that perspective, I think there has been a decided lack of energy, and I'm starting to see that turn around, which I think is quite pleasing. But I think this would be a good moment to help everybody motivate continuing that upwards trend.
Okay. So I recognize that you work for a company that doesn't let you talk about what your plans are very, very much. How soon could we expect to interop with the latest features?
We're certainly working on it. You can see a bunch of that work in the open source as we do this quite publicly, and you are more than welcome to contribute as well. So this is definitely a great place. But no, in terms of future plans, this is work that we are doing in the open. We've been pretty clear about our support for WebTransport from day one, and you can see it's currently happening and doing the thing.
Okay, thanks. Would either someone from Firefox or Chrome like to talk about how soon they think they will be on a current draft, so we can plan like when our next interop event might be?
Go ahead, Victor.
I can comment that at least I personally do not expect and work on anything that is WebTransport related, but does not immediately affect MOQ. Which
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Victor. Can you speak up?
Oh, okay. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. I am saying that right now it is unlikely that I will have time to work on anything that is not directly related to MOQ as a feature requirement. That said, that is my plans, and there might be other people at Google or other people working on the Chromium open source project who are welcome to pick up the other parts of that APIs. I cannot comment on that.
Okay, so when you say you're planning to do work that the parts that are required by MOQ, so that's like version negotiation. I guess my understanding is that Chrome's sort of hoping to be in the opting out of flow control party.
It's just hoping out of flow control. My answer is I have no plans to implement it. And there is no one I know currently at Google who has this as an action item, which means like if someone is willing to implement it in Chrome, that is perfectly fine with me. But I do not oppose to this as a concept. It's just I don't have time to implement it.
All right. I mean, I think that's not a deal breaker since you have a workaround, which is to just not, like you can negotiate it off, or at least that's where we are. Thanks. Max?
Cool. Max, Mozilla. We're currently on draft 4. It's on our roadmap. I can't comment on the timeline.
Okay. Oh, Martin?
This is more of a question to the chairs, maybe. Where do we stand on working group last call for the HTTP3 document? I think people might be holding off on major work on the protocol until the document has progressed a little bit more.
So from our perspective, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this after Eric's presentation on what GitHub issues have been closed recently. We're close to done in terms of open issues and open questions on the protocol, but we definitely won't send this document to the ISG unless it's been implemented. We have some flexibility on whether we want to do working group last call before or after that. Our current plan has been to have folks implement, because the editors did a pass after resolving the open issues, and we think the document is in good shape to implement. We don't see any changes right now. The only changes that we expect is when people implement, they'll think, oh, this isn't clear, or if they actually find a bug in the spec, which is unlikely but possible. So from our perspective, we're kind of done in a holding pattern where once we've done that round of like intro op on let's say almost all features, ideally all features, then we'll just start working with last call.
All right. I don't think I have anything else. You guys have heard enough preaching from me.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks.
Eric, you're up next.
Yeah, I think we said last time we were cutting the draft so that we could pencils down and stop changing and actually go implement. I continue to be amazed by the difference between the TV and the projector. There we go. All right, let's talk about the drafts. There's not a whole lot here, as you will see. Most of this is updates since last time. I believe there's currently one open issue, of which Martin is the proud owner in H3. But in terms of, are we close to done? Are we thinking things aren't changing anymore? This is the pencils down moment. So let's talk about kind of a little bit of what we did. There's some changes we made that we want to make sure the working group is okay with. We've got 2 or 3 important questions that we get to all decide upon as a crowd, and then we are hopefully good. Overview. We've cut new versions of all 3 drafts. As you can see, we did some interesting terminology updates. I want to just run through those real quickly because it's going to impact how you read things. This is that polish we're doing as we wrap things up. So we've decided to call applications code that comes from a developer. So for example, if I were a browser and I were to be running somebody's JavaScript, that JavaScript is application code. Whereas a WebTransport implementation is an endpoint. So we've been kind of using the term client and server super loosey-goosey, and it wouldn't be the IETF if we didn't spend a little while talking about terms. So these are those terms. We added some of the sub-protocol negotiation stuff to the overview. So to Ben Schwartz's comment earlier, we're trying to make sure that everything is in the overview rather than directly referencing one of the transport-specific mappings, so that we can talk about what does WebTransport as a common and transport-agnostic protocol framework offer. We talked about draining a session a little bit. This is one of those concepts that was previously only in one of the documents and is now in the overview. There's some text here if you want to read it. And we also added reliable reset, although it sounds like Ben is going to file an issue to make sure that we didn't miss anything there.
And he's already filed it. Thanks, Ben.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben. And we did a quick update to some of the security considerations. Onward, stage 3. We did some fun renaming. So as you're reading things, you're like, wait a minute, where did this setting go and what's going on? That is intentional. You aren't seeing weird things. We thought it would be nice if we all typed slightly fewer characters. We did a renumbering of the code point for the transport parameter. I'm just calling this out because as the ask is to update to the latest draft, as you update to the latest draft, if you wonder why nobody's talking to you, you may have forgotten to go update this. This is how we're doing the different draft versions of what you speak. So make sure your transport parameter is in fact the transport parameter you think you're sending. And we also added some text on negotiation of flow control, which was the thing we talked about in our previous meeting. So this is the new set of all the settings that you need to send. Rather than trying to read all of that text, I thought it would be nice if I made a slightly shorter version. So this is the client and server send all the things, and the server sends the extra thing that says, by the way, you can do extended connect. So we've returned to that state. Seems fine. The way we ended up doing this, and we're about to talk about another issue, we said that if either endpoint says you can only have one session, then you don't have flow control and clients can't open more than one session. If both send saying, hey, I'm willing to do more than one session at a time, then you've said, I'm willing to do more than one session. If you're willing to do more than one session, you need to make sure that the sessions don't stomp on each other, and therefore you have flow control. And the only other thing I want to call attention to, just in case anybody wants to run for the microphone, is we said that if flow control is not enabled, you ignore the capsules rather than freaking out if you see the capsules. Digesting that. Cool. The thinking there being that especially before some of the settings have been exchanged. It would be awkward if you were to say, hey, I'd like to open up flow control real wide so you can go real fast. And the other side said, I'm sorry, I didn't want to speak flow control at all. I wanted to go super fast. And the end result was you now can't talk to each other. So it seems like the only reasonable option there is to say, no, just ignore them. Cool. Seeing general nods and of assent. All right, the only other thing is we added a new must into the security considerations, which I wanted to make sure didn't slip by without us actually agreeing as a working group that we think we want to do this. The new sentence is this bolded one, which says that if you're going to share a transport connection with other web transport sessions, you have to have flow control. That was the practical effect of the requirements we put on the setting anyway, but that is the stance that we're taking. And the question I wanted to ask is, should we also require this when you're sharing with other HTTP traffic so that you can limit how much the web transport session that is going in parallel with other HTTP traffic is going to have an impact there. Note the first sentence here, which we can make easier to read, talks about how web transport sessions share both congestion control and flow control contexts with web transport sessions. And of course, those are also shared with other HTTP traffic. So just as much as you can cause other sessions to stall, you can also cause your HTTP requests and responses to stall, which seems bad. Lucas. Oh, geez.
Hello. Sorry. Clarification question. When you say all HTTP traffic, a HTTP connection doesn't necessarily carry HTTP traffic. So if you're going to do like WebSockets in the same connection, so I think I don't have an answer, but maybe we just want to.
That is a very good point. We should really say non-web transport traffic.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Victor is next in the queue.
I personally, I think my conclusion last time I was thinking about this, web flow control within WebTransport is not really a security issue, because even with two regular HTTP responses, with regular HTTP responses, one misbehaving origin can eat up all of your flow control, all of your like session-wide max data window or things like that. So to some extent, the design of HTTP assumes that you do not share connection between untrusted origins that are actively trying to DOS each other. So to that extent, I do not necessarily see this as a security issue. So what can happen here is you can have a web transport session use up all of the flow control, and then you can no longer open HTTP requests. And I guess it is not entirely clear to me what happens then, and whether we want to, yeah.
Okay, do you mind if I say that back to you to make sure I understood? So I think what you're saying is, because you're going to essentially the same origin, although it might be different resources on the same origin, we essentially say, don't stomp on each other. And if you do, then you're doing it wrong, and that's your problem.
Well, I mean, more yes, which is to say, yeah.
Right, it's you either way, so you stomped on yourself, you didn't stomp on anyone else.
Yeah, like the main purpose of embedded flow control, and specifically embedded flow control with like for web transport sessions, is when you have web transport sessions to multiple backends that operate at different speeds, and you like want to make sure that your proxy does not have to buffer at like the lowest speed backend, or to like assume it's highest speed backend. Yeah, that is the reason why we have flow control, but it is not there to prevent the server from shooting itself, because within the nested flow control, if you're a server, you can say, okay, please open me up to 1,000 streams, since the browser can say it's the same. It's the nested flow control does not solve it. You still need to have some local form of enforcement. And I feel like this is something that we do not currently spell out, which is to say, let's say if you're a browser and you know you can have 100 streams, it is up to you to make sure that your web transport does not use up all 100 if you still want to use requests. And like, you don't, the server should not be there to tell you that, and like, you don't even need server to tell you that. You have to enforce this locally.
I see. Thank you. Alan.
Alan Frindell. So I think one thing about what Victor was saying that I don't quite agree with is the HTTP response case of one response blocking another, or consuming all of the connection flow control. That doesn't happen because there's stream flow control. So if you're setting your limits properly, then like no one stream will consume the entire connection flow control in an HTTP session. So when it comes to answering this question about like, should we require flow control when sharing with HTTP traffic? I kind of think so. Although one thing I'm thinking about is that there's nothing that stops the HTTP session. Like the HTTP session doesn't have, can starve the WebTransport one potentially, because it doesn't have a limit on the session. It's allowed to use the entire quick connection flow control, but like WebTransport can't, which is maybe not great, but I don't think we're gonna change that. The other thing I was thinking about Victor's point is that we're a little lucky here in that HTTP, since nobody uses push, only has client initiated bidirectional streams. And so to some degree, like the client can manage not letting one like HTTP or a web transport session use up all the client initiated bidirectional streams. But it can't control which of the things going on in the server. If the server is opening the streams, like the server may not have that coordination capability, particularly when it's doing things like proxying from two different origins that have no idea what's going, that they're sharing a connection at lower level. So yeah, I kind of think if you're not gonna pool, or if you're gonna pool with HTTP, then you have to implement flow control. Seems fine.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I think I agree with Victor that flow control is not really a security consideration. It's more of a performance consideration. To the question of should we allow this when using HTTP, I think yes, we should, and that's why I opened an issue to negotiate flow control separately from the max sessions setting.
Should we allow or require? Because you just said allow.
That is a good question. I would like to have flow control mandatory on every web transport session, but I don't want to reopen that kind of worms.
Gotcha. Because the security considerations that we have right now do talk about a fairness scheme that ensures that everybody gets a reasonable share of controlled resources. So we started with that text from the beginning in security considerations.
But I guess,
We've
Martin,
got a
you
Lucas
didn't
actively taking off his hat.
quite answer that question, but I think I know your answer, which was if the session involves web transport and non-web transport traffic, should we require flow control? Like, give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and I'll relay it. Like, do you have an opinion on that, or? Yeah. But should the spec say must? Like, should we require it? Is the kind of open question here. All right, let the minutes show that Martin shrugged.
Lucas Pardew wearing no hats. I'm trying not to break the strangely short microphone cable. I agree. It's not a security consideration here. It's important. It's a consideration. I might call it an availability consideration. I posted in the chat a link to a 10-year-old bug related to flow control that has been affecting me and customers of Cloudflare, that when you construct a certain kind of web page that does some video loading, the connection, the application, the video player consuming those bytes takes a nap, and it breaks everything to the origin from being able to make progress, which results in a connection timeout, dumping all of the state, and then a reconnection if you do a reload or a page nav or something. that could be like recoverable in a web transport context, I think, but really annoying if you keep dropping out of calls every so often. So I think we need to capture something to make people aware of this, especially to the point that Alan was making about the server side. I don't think we can be too prescriptive of what to do, but to highlight the consideration. I've got no opinion on if you should make it a must or not, but that I'm trying to make things aware that if you want to live with this kind of flow control bug, that's fine, but at least you made that conscious choice.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm going to pop into this lovely issue that Martin filed, and then when we get to the end of that, I think we'll faceplant until we have a plan. So Martin pointed out a very good thing, which is that because we tied the negotiation of flow control to the declaration that you want more than one session, there is no way to use flow control when you only have one session. And if we were just saying you had other non-HTTP traffic and you thought it'd be nice if those things played a little bit nicer, there was no great way to do that. So if we wanted to allow doing that, we either need to separate into a different setting that explicitly just says, hey, I want to use flow control on this web transport session. You had another creative idea, which I thought was kind of neat, which was we already allow you to send headers that say, these are my initial flow control values. And so if you start saying, hey, these are my initial flow control values, you probably wanted to use flow control. So that should count as enabling it. We could pick any other way we want to spell that. We could always just say flow control is enabled, and then you don't have to negotiate it. Question mark. I think the first question is, and nods and thumbs up are equally helpful. Do we think it's useful to allow people to turn this on even when they only have one web transport session? I see a nod. Did anybody who didn't file the issue also want that? Cool. We've got two. I think that seems pretty reasonable. It's not super hard for us to do, especially in the context of our previous discussion of saying, hey, we want this to share with non-web transport traffic. It seems perfectly reasonable to acknowledge that your web transport thing might not be the only thing that consumes resources. So that we can do. Does anybody have preferences as to how we spell it? This is your moment to bike shed something. Victor.
I mildly prefer A. B has like kind of the same flavor as the current solution, which is like, oh, we're being clever here, and let's not be clever.
Cool. We could also use that as our implicit, by the way, I support web transport setting if we wanted. But in the spirit of changing fewer things, let's just make an explicit flow control setting unless anybody has an objection to that. Martin.
My first preference would be D, option D. Second preference would be option B. I don't think if you do flow control that you will not send initial values because you're just wasting a round trip.
Is there a chance that you'd like to have that happen before settings get there? That is the only challenge that I have with, oh, actually it's not in settings anyway, it's in, Do you still have a synchronization problem where, say I send the extended connect request, so I as a client have to wait for the server settings to arrive in order to know that extended connect is supported and that I can use WebTransport. Once I do that,
yes, but that doesn't cost you a round trip because the server settings are sent in 0.5 RTT data.
Right. But once I do that, I can now start sending maybe more than your initial values.
But actually, you can send the web transport request before you receive the server settings because
Correct.
you need the extended connect setting.
Cool. Okay. So we either just say send one of the settings that gives you initial values and call it a day, and then you're good. Great. Okay. So we have a preference for A and a preference for B.
Great. Our favorite. Yeah, we might. So if anyone has more opinions on this, come up. Victor, based on this discussion, you still have a preference for A, or how do you feel about B based on the arguments that were just made?
B is also fine.
All right.
Cool.
Does anyone in the room object to B?
B is actually pretty easy to specify because we just say if you start doing the flow control thing, since we had to wait for your settings anyway, if you start doing the flow control thing, you're good. Is there any issue with the client settings not getting there in time?
As a clarifying question, since any of these solutions are
They're
based
going to
on
be in settings.
settings,
You're good. Yeah, it's going to be the same problem either way.
Yeah.
Cool, great. B.
sold.
We'll go write some PRs. And before we talk about structured fields, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. B.
B. Yeah,
for
consensus
writing
in
that
the room to go with option B. PRs will be discussed on the list as is tradition.
And I think that brings us back to the place where we still need some clarity in order to finish up this text. So we think we want to allow you to allow but not require you to do flow control with non-web transport traffic. And we move that out of, so basically we're saying take out this entire section. This whole paragraph of security considerations is gone. It's not security considerations anymore. You should implement a fairness scheme is not a security thing. Is that our...
Just from what I've heard in the room, I don't think people said delete it, but maybe move it to a performance considerations section and
Great.
tweak the text.
Cool. All right, other updates. Lucas did some lovely things and helped us get our structured fields right, which is cool because they weren't. So now the available protocols is a list. The protocols you can put in that available protocols list is an item, and all of those things must be strings. We also added some text about how drain session actually works and what it's for. I know we spent quite a bit of time in our previous meeting trying to reason through for ourselves what drain session is and how it works. So this is both a reminder if you've forgotten and a quick double check to make sure that everybody thinks this is in fact how it works and what it's supposed to do. Notably, we said this is for an intermediary to be able to say, hey, I would like you all to be done, please, but I can't necessarily enforce that you all stop opening new streams and things like that.
Martin, are you still in the queue or is that stale? No, I'll thanks.
And same question for Victor, potentially.
Yeah, I had the remark about the previous slide, which is structured headers.
Yep.
To people, if there is anyone who was other than me who implemented the previous version of this is not backwards compatible change. It used to specify tokens, and now it specifies strings.
I think that should be okay because we revved the transport parameter identifier, and so once you've negotiated that you're doing web transport, you know who's talking to who.
Well, I don't think anyone actually shipped this, but to anyone who started implementing this, strings are notably not tokens, and tokens will now get rejected.
Yep. It's a good call out.
And to add to this, speaking as an individual, we had a discussion in Mask recently around tokens and strings, and someone pointed out that in the structured fields RFC, they clearly say that the tokens are only defined for like backwards compatibility because those used to be a thing, and strongly recommend that anything new use string. So we're kind of in line with that with this change.
Beautiful.
We're very much in line with that with this change, rather.
More than slightly. Great. We just talked about drain session, and that's it for H3. Any other thoughts about, I see a Ben Schwartz in the room and in the queue.
Go for it, Ben.
So what's the difference between drain session and wrap up? Can we just use wrap up?
So this question came up for the past 3 IETFs since we wrote the wrap-up draft. And what we decided in the room was that if wrap-up was wrapped up, but then we could have used it here. It would have been great. In practice, the two authors of Wrap Up have not been doing any work on it, that being Lucas and myself, sorry. So we don't want to hold WebTransport back because of that. I think there's going to be a lot more discussions in the HTTP working group around Wrap Up once we start getting some real world experience with it. So the intent is to keep them separate for now, even if they might land one day on the same semantic.
I have a question about that, actually. That seems like a completely reasonable plan if we're convinced that the work and the changes we might make in HTTP are because there's some larger scope than what we're using it for in WebTransport. Is that a larger scope, and therefore those changes aren't things that we would be sad to not have here? Or is this a case where they are, in fact, truly identical, and if we learn something, essentially what we're saying is we don't really care about having that learning here?
The answer is we won't know until we've done all that work. And worst case scenario, if we learn something with Wrap Up, we can have that document update WebTransport and say,
Perfect.
oh, and by the way, we deprecate during session, replace it with Wrap Up. Is something we can do at some point in the future, in the unlikely event that we come up with something much better than this. Or even to say, you can still send during session or wrap up with these extra wrap up parameters that we end up defining is a path forward that doesn't delay WebTransport.
Lovely. Thank you. All right, let's talk very briefly about H2. We did some stuff. We did some more renaming. Love a good find and replace. A couple other things, just this is more notes for implementers. As you are all busy implementing right now, do please note that closed WebTransport session has not only been renamed, but reordered in the spelling of how it works. Important details. We updated a bunch of the settings text to reflect that you can update settings in H2 and that those updates are then acknowledged, and how to make sure that you're not doing anything wrong there. And we removed some of the duplicate capsule definitions that we had waited on landing in H3 before we took them out of H2. They landed in H3, we took them out of H2. We have one substantive topic for H2, which is Victor put up about an hour ago a very nice pull request that adds slightly more discussion than I think we'd talked about previously around how you use WebTransport outside of H2. And I thought it would be good for us to all kind of talk about that together. Victor, I'll let you talk through some of this, but my very brief summary was, it says, no, you must not use WebTransport over H2 with H3. And you can't use it with the web for H1, but for non-web H1 usage, you could technically use that upgrade token via upgrade, and adds a wholly new custom header format, which we might need to do some more work to specify for how to use WebTransport on any arbitrary byte stream. Now, I had thought that we were going to say WebTransport over H2 is technically something that defines a way to do WebTransport on any byte stream, but we leave that as a exercise for future work, with a note that if you have a more specific transport mapping like H3 that can break out something like an unreliable datagram and make the datagram actually unreliable, you must do that instead. So this feels to me like slightly more scope, but I also want to give Victor a chance to talk through some of the thought process there.
Yeah, so for H3 and H1, the H3 is just like something we should have mentioned because otherwise things don't work. For H1, if the draft is actually ambiguous because technically by defining an upgrade token, we kind of specify how to speak this over H1. Because in H1, you can send upgrade WebTransport, and this has some semantics since we put it into IANA registry. And I thought it is worthwhile to call out explicitly that, yes, this is how this works, and no, you should not do this in a browser because otherwise you will have security problems. So the second thing was mostly motivated by QMux, and specifically like the discussion we had where WebTransport technically provides you with some API to Quick where Quick is not like some Quick is both a very specific protocol that is defined in RFC 9000, but it is also kind of an API that gives you some ideas that like you can get a connection and you can get multiplex streams and they have predictable semantics. And WebTransport is a very specific instantiation of this. And WebTransport over H2 is a very well-defined way to put this over something that looks like a TCP connection. So I was thought that like we might as well fill the gaps now. And the reason I decided to do that instead of just saying note we will define later is that one, I don't think there is actually that much text to write in addition to what we have now. And the second reason I said that is I believe there are motivating use cases for this. And there might be real interest for this. And in particular, I think I myself have use cases for doing that. So I like if I implement when I finish implementing WebTransport over H2, I think that I will almost certainly ship that as well.
So jumping in as chair here, I was checking our charter, and technically defining WebTransport over H1 or over SCTP, whatever, is not excluded from our charter. However, when we adopted this document, the scope of the document was WebTransport over HTTP2, which is defined in the name of the draft and the title. We could consider this expansion in scope, but that would require working group consensus. And my gut, it would also require liaison with the HTTP working group, because defining how to do HTTP2 settings over something else is somewhat in their turf. So we'd have to make sure that they're okay with that. So consider that as when you comment on this, whether you want, like, I'd like to hear, in addition to your technical opinions, how do you feel about this expansion of scope?
I saw the next slide flash quickly, and now I'm curious what's.
I was
next.
just checking what's next.
Okay, Alan Frindell. So I just wanted to make sure people were aware that this is now overlaps with what we are working on rechartering Quick for, called QMux, which is like a way to make the API of Quick accessible elsewhere. Which, I mean, these two things have an overlap. We're talking about that in Quick this week, so please come to Quick if you're interested in this. I tend to think that it doesn't make sense to define how to use this protocol in things that aren't HTTP2 in a document called WebTransport over HTTP2. But I do have a use case for this, and I am planning to use it. So, or I don't know. I mean, this PR is brand new. I haven't read it in detail. I don't know if I want to do it exactly this way, but I do want to send these capsules over things that aren't H2 or something like it. So.
Kazuhoku, I think that it's not that unreasonable to run WebTransport over H2 over HTTP1 just for testing purposes at least. I would point out that the extended connect is not a version independent property. So we cannot say that we cannot say that we have this for all the HTTP versions without HTTP3, because we don't know how HTTP 4 would turn out, for example. So if we are to allow it to be used on other versions, we should be specific that it's going to be used only on HTTP 1.1, or we have to change the HTTP, how the extended connect works in the HTTP working group, and we are going to discuss that on Friday. And Ben Schultz is going to present that.
The other thing that we're missing is settings for H1. So it's settings and extended connect. And I think the PR tries to deal with some of that with upgrade.
Hey, Lucas, again, as an individual, I saw the PR and I had the chance to review it properly. I kind of echo the statements. It seems weird to put statements like this in the H2 document to me. maybe I just haven't woken up yet. I don't. It just seems odd that we're being that prescriptive there on this. The general idea of it and how it overlaps with some of the QMUGs, yeah, fine. Like, there's probably a problem we would need to sort out at some point, but it doesn't seem critical to, like, somebody's going to implement this H2 spec. They'll just ignore that text because they don't care, unless they really care and they've already thought about it and they're in these groups and they're trying to solve it. So I want to focus on the regular protocol engineer who's just going to see this draft and pick it up and implement the thing and deploy it and never come and speak to us or interact. This slide's up. Again, I haven't had a chance to review the PR, but it is reminding me of the binary HTTP work that was done. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but yeah, maybe consider reusing existing formats if they fit the bill.
Feels like there's a substantial amount of specification to make sure we don't accidentally whoopsie if we were to go this route.
So David Skenazy, speaking as an individual, I personally don't think we should add this scope. I think getting this right is going to be time consuming, and I'd rather see us ship HTTP2 without this and punt it to another document that could be in QMUX, could be in HTTP, could be another draft in the WebTrans working group, but I prefer to keep this not define this here.
Victor.
I think I assume when you say that, you mean the non-HTTP and not HTTP1 specifically, because...
Speak closer to the mic, Victor, please.
Do you...
The room next door is loud.
Yeah, I assume when you say that, you're referring to the non-HTTP part of the PR.
I'm referring to the part that defines new protocol elements. So this new wire format and this defining for H1. I think having an appendix that says if you wanted to define this over streams, beware of these dragons is totally reasonable. But defining how to do it is a protocol work that then we, like now speaking as chair, they would delay shipping this document because we would want people to implement that, and we haven't even started to discuss if people are interested in implementing that.
I don't believe defining this over H1 is any more work than currently in the PR. That said, I am personally do agree that it would most likely make more sense to remove the new protocol part and put it into some other draft that might go into this or some other working group.
Ian?
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Speaking as a person who deploys some of this technology, I really want the HTTP1 version. And if you shipped only the HTTP1 version and not the HTTP2 version, that would be fine with me. So I kind of don't care when this document ships in some weird sense. I know that's counter to David with his working group hat on, because I have kind of a completely different vantage point. But yeah, between the servers I own on the front end as well as all the AFVs in the world that support HTTP1 and only support HTTP1 for whatever reason, it's much easier for me to kind of deal with the H1 is like always going to be the final option. Like I always need that in like an LB sort of environment. So that being said, putting this in a document about HTTP2 is bizarre. So like from a structure perspective, I agree that it's a little awkward to shove it in. I mean, the easiest thing I would think is just like, changing the name to like defining it over like H1 and H3 and move on. But I mean,
yeah,
you could also make it a new document that you do later, or but I still do want it. And to Alan's point, like I'm probably going to try to build it anyway, but like it'd be really nice if someone standardized how to build it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think one of the things that happened is we started with a very H2 specific thing, and we have since turned it into something that happens to work on any arbitrary byte stream. And so it would be perfectly reasonable if we wanted to say, hey, this is actually WebTransport over a bidirectional reliable byte stream. And in order to use it on H2, you need extended connect and settings. In order to use it on H1, you need upgrade. I'm not totally sure that the extra custom format pieces would come in there, because that feels like a substantial increase in scope. So we could do that. And I think that really brings us into some of the QMUX question that's next. But for this part.
So it sounds like there isn't consensus to add this to the document, and we should maybe just add an informational appendix to mention some of this. But we encourage, if there's any interest to do this for other protocols, please write something up and bring it to this working group. Thank you.
Sounds good. QMUX. Lucas, do you want to tell us a little bit about QMUX?
Yep. Again, speaking kind of as an individual, but as a quick working group chair, not a WebTransport one. This is really like a short status update and preview of what we're going to be talking about in the quick working group session tomorrow. To go back slightly, this came up last time in the IETF, or even going back further, but we made significant progress in defining kind of what was desirable properties of something we were trying to do. And to give more time to discuss this, we had a quick working group interim meeting in June to discuss this and hammer it out, and to really try and see if this was something in scope for the quick working group, whether it should be something else. The outcome of that meeting was that there was emerging consensus that it was appropriate for the quick working group. That was a strong sense in Bangkok, but the interim really helped us identify that there were people interested in doing that work in quick, but that it would require a charter update. So we drafted some text in that meeting, and we've been hammering that out. It has now been taken by our AD to the IESG for review. I don't have any slides, I'm afraid. Well, we'll go into more details during the quick working group meeting, but it's effectively adding another work area item of creating a way to use Quick's streaming model for other substrates. And there's some requirements on what those substrates mean, mainly in terms of scoping them to work within the kind of IP networks that we have, where you need security or congestion control, those kinds of things, but not precluding work where other people are talking about other substrates that they might be interested in. It's kind of their own thing to deal with. So creating a design that could work in these different deployments. The session, quick working group session, Kazuo is going to be leading a section of that meeting, talking about the different wire format protocols ideas that people have had. We're not looking to adopt a protocol yet, because the charter needs to be approved to allow us to work on that, but we want to explore the solution space to touch on some of the issues we've been talking about here. Could it be based on frames or capsules or this? And if you're going to do it this way and you don't have a handshake protocol that allows you to exchange things up front, how do you bootstrap the things you really need for this design of the thing? We don't know what it is yet, but we kind of do. So it's a terrible description, but if this is piquing your interest, please do come along to the quick working group session tomorrow. We've just published another document design for one of the proposals, but there is overlap here. I don't think it impacts anything that the WebTransport working group is working on. We want to make progress, and we want to get to the working group last call. Maybe in the future there'll be something, but I want to keep the focus on this group to implement and deliver what we can do and show that it works. And if there's some cool stuff in the future, brilliant. We'll come back in a year or two's time and talk about how amazing we were in the design. That's all I have now. I don't know if there's any clarification questions, but yeah.
Thank you, Lucas. Yeah, if any quick clarification questions come up now, otherwise bring them to the quick session, because I think that's where this topic will be discussed most.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. I think in terms of elephants and rooms and things like that, one of the comments that we've all kind of said to each other, which I think is worth talking about a little bit, is had we had a very different timeline, there's a high chance that we would be doing WebTransport over QMUX instead of WebTransport over arbitrary byte stream /H2. And I think part of our goal here is say, okay, great, we have a mechanism to do this over a byte stream. That's a good thing. Let's go pencils down on that. And then if we want to come back in the future and add some stuff, and if QMux actually goes somewhere and that takes off, then great, we'll use that too. And that'll be an option for folks. What's left? As we approach the end of the list of issues and the end of the open PRs, we start talking about things like asking the chairs to start a working group last call. And that usually is a great opportunity to encourage folks to read the draft and implement the drafts. And I'm very happy to report that some of these are now no longer true because people actually read the drafts. So thank you. I think Ben has already opened an issue on the overview. So that's lovely. We can skip our celebration. We had an open issue for H3. We hopefully have some more after today's discussion. So that's very happy. I was a little optimistic in writing this slide, but I'm pleased to see it is in fact true. So that issue we do now have a plan for, and we can actually go write a pull request. And similarly, we had only one open issue in H2, although Marius did a beautiful review and got us several more. So thank you for those. There's some great clarifications that we're going to put in. And I see Harold's in the queue.
Just to be obnoxious, I filed another issue half an hour before the meeting. Turns out that server certificate verification is completely unspecified in the current documents, but it is referenced in the W3C API, which feels like someone is that like you cannot implement fully the API without knowledge outside of the specs, and that bothers me.
First, it's not obnoxious at all. Thank you for reading them and reviewing them and noticing things. Second, I think Victor had replied on the issue already if he wants to hop in the queue real quick. If not, we can always take it to the issue because it was a fairly late breaking thing. There's a Victor.
Yeah, I mean, my answer is this is a RFC 8446 concern, not WebTransport concern. It does not change how we use Quick or WebTransport. It changes how we use TLS.
Would it?
So there is nothing to just mention in the WebTransport spec.
So jumping in as chair, I would propose that we move this issue from the H3 document to the overview document and resolve it with an editorial PR that says, by the way, if you use like this server certificate hash, do that that happens in TLS, which, and with a reference to 8446, and we're done. Great. I see a thumbs up from Harold. Okay, I'll move the issue now.
Lovely. Thank you.
So, based on the conversation today and the new issues being filed, we kind of discussed among the chairs and are thinking that maybe our ordering needs to be reevaluated a little bit, because we had this optimistic view that we would get to the hackathon and the implementers would descend on Gondor, and I'm getting all my Tolkien references backwards, and it would be great, and we'd have interop on all the features, and then we'd be done. That didn't quite happen as planned, but anyway, we're thinking, since when folks are reading the document, they're filing issues, like Martin's issue is a perfect example of something that everyone's like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea, but great, it's not backwards compatible, so we've broken interop. Again, not a huge deal, but if people are in the middle of implementing, that's not great. From the discussion around interop and implementation earlier, it sounds like folks are implementing, but no one is extremely close to ready with the latest draft. So what we think we'll do is we'll instead reorder those two and start the working group last call pretty soon. Let's have like the issues that have been discussed today. Let's have PRs and land those. And then we'll start working group last call on all three documents. We'll make it pretty long because 3 documents at once is a lot. And the idea being, especially if there are changes that come out of that, what the drafts will look like will be will look like after that working group last call will be the new interop target. To be perfectly clear, we do not, even if we declare the working group last call successful, as in there's consensus to move the documents forward, we will not send the document to the ISG for publication until we have interop like we discussed. And if the changes from working group last call or from the interop require like are big enough, we will do a second working group last call, just to make sure that whatever we send to the ISG both has been implemented and has the full consensus of the working group. So just thumbs up, thumbs down. How do people feel about this plan? I'm seeing thumbs up in the room. Great. Okay, so we're gonna do that soon. Yeah, I think anything. All right. Well, thanks everyone. This has been a pleasure as always. We shall see you on GitHub for those remaining things, and then on the list for the working group last call. I'm sure that'll be very exciting. Thanks for coming to WebTransport, and see you on the list.